Honey, open the door. Why did you lock me inside? Open the door. Open the door, please. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful girl named Geraldine. Everybody called her JD. JD was a third generation billionaire heiress who was born into wealth and affluence. Her family were the owner of King Conglomerate, a multi-billion company that spanned different sectors. King Conglomerate was a household name, but JD's life was not rosy at all. In fact, her life was a sad one. JD lost her parents and her little brother in a fatal car accident when she was just 2 years old and had to live with her grandparents, Grandma Rose and Grandpa Ben, the original founders of King Conglomerate. Grandma Rose and Grandpa Ben loved their granddaughter Geraldine with all their heart. They did everything possible to make JD comfortable. They also taught JD to be humble despite their wealth. So JD grew into a very sweet, loving woman who was humble to the core. If you saw her on the street, you will never believe her family had millions, not to talk about multi-billions. But life wasn't done with JD and her family. When she was just 18 years old, Grandma Rose died too, leaving just her and Grandpa Ben alone in this wicked world. Since then, it had just been JD and her sweet old grandpa. They were inseparable like two peas in a pot. There was nothing JD couldn't tell Grandpa Ben. Over the years, JD grew into a beautiful, resilient woman, and Grandpa Ben too had aged. Time was no longer on his side, a fact that terrified him. He was the only surviving member of JD's family, and if something were to happen to him, JD's world would crumble. So he made it his last mission on earth to make sure JD married a good man that would be there for her after he was long gone. JD had a boyfriend named Jerry, but Grandpa Ben didn't like him at all. In fact, he despised him. Jerry was from a humble background, the first child of 6 children. His father left his mother when he and his siblings were very young, so Jerry's mother had to do all kinds of menial jobs to see Jerry and his siblings through school. But Jaden didn't mind his background at all. She loved him deeply and couldn't wait to marry him, despite Grandpa Ben's reservation. Jerry and Geraldine met years ago at a conference organized by King Conglomerate, but Jerry didn't know about JD's identity as she disguised herself as one of the ushers in that event. That day, they exchanged contact, and before you know it, they started dating. It was after a few months that JD revealed who her family was. Jerry was shocked and he couldn't believe it at first, but after JD showed him evidence that he believed her, and he felt so lucky to be dating a billionaire heiress. One day, Grandpa Ben called JD into the living room. As they sat in the living room, he began in a soft but steady voice. "Pumpkin, there is something I want to discuss with you. Something that's been bothering me and keeping me up late at night," Grandpa Ben said with seriousness on his face. "Gramp," as she fondly called Grandpa Ben, "what is bothering you?" JD asked. "My dear, I'm worried you are yet to get a good man to marry and settle down with. Age is no longer on your side. Anything can happen. I want to see you happily married with children before I join your grandma," Grandpa Ben said. "Grandpa, are you sick? Are you dying? You can't leave me too. You're the only one I have left," JD said with desperation on her voice as tears welled up in her eyes. "No, Pumpkin, I'm not dying. I'm still very strong. But you are getting old. You need to settle down before you become an old maiden. Nobody wants an old maiden for a wife," Grandpa Ben joked as he laughed. JD heaved a sigh of relief. She was scared for a moment that something was going to happen to her grandfather. "Gramp, I won't become an old maiden. I have a boyfriend, remember? Soon we will get married and give you many great grandbabies," she said. Oh, that one. My dear, I think you should continue your search for a good man, Grandpa Ben said. Gramp, what did Jerry ever do to you for you to hate him so much? He's a good man. Is it because he's from a poor background? JD asked. No, Pumpkin, you are getting it all wrong. I don't hate him. I don't just like him. He's not good for you. Have you seen his eyes? They are always up. He doesn't have kindness in his eyes, as if he's always up to something mysterious. As for his background, I don't have a problem with that. We were once poor in this Lagos. We hawked pure water and gala in hold up, but with hard work and determination and God's grace, look at where we are today. But that boy Jerry or whatever you call him, there is something about him that makes me uncomfortable. I don't think he's the right person to you, Grandpa Ben said. Well, Gramp, I love him and he's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. Please accept him for my sake, please. JD pleaded with her grandfather. Grandpa Ben sighed deeply and said, Okay, okay, since you insist on marrying him, I would allow you to marry him under one condition, he said. What condition again, Gram? JD asked. We will test him and see if he truly loves you and if he's truly loyal as you claim, Grandpa Ben said. Test him how? JD asked. Leave that to me, my dear. I have just the perfect plan. A few months later, JD and Jerry married. They had a small intimate wedding much to Mama Jerry's disapproval. She wanted a big societal wedding where she would invite all her meeting members to show them that her son had hit jackpot. But the couple didn't want that, so they had a small wedding. After the wedding, things were going well for both JD and Jerry. Jerry started working in King Conglomerate, courtesy his wife. They were madly in love with each other and did everything together. Jerry treated JD like a queen. He never let her stress. He made her breakfast in bed every other day and drove her to and from work every day. JD was happy. She married right. Grandpa Ben was wrong about Jerry, she thought. He was everything she had ever prayed for in a man. The young couple basked in marital bliss, but that didn't last long. One day, something terrible happened. As JD was working in the office, she received a strange phone call. Grandpa Ben had collapsed from heart attack and he couldn't make it. He died. JD was mad with shock. She didn't want to believe that Grandpa Ben was truly dead. Without thinking, she dashed inside her car and drove like a mad woman to Grandpa Ben's house. But she couldn't make it there. Her car collided with a truck and her windscreen shattered with some glass shards flying into her eyes. JD was rushed to the hospital where the doctor told her husband that her eyes were severely damaged by the shards of glass that entered her eyes, that JD would never be able to see again. Jerry was devastated. First, his grandfather-in-law just died suddenly. Now, his wife had gone blind. He was particularly scared for JD. Grandpa Ben was the only family she had left. She would be so devastated, and he didn't know how that would affect their marriage. After a few weeks in the hospital, JD was discharged, and Jerry took her home to face the reality of what their life had become. When they got home, Jerry tried to make JD as comfortable as he could. He was always there to console her and help her adjust to the life without her sight. But how long could it continue like this? Let's find out. A few months passed since the incident and Jerry's life became tough. He had to juggle between working at the company and taking care of his blind wife. At first, he didn't mind, but alas, the whole routine began to take a toll on him. He hired caregivers, but none of them stayed beyond a month, so he had to help his wife by himself. And before you know it, 2 years passed. One day, Mama Jerry called from the village. Hello, Mama, how are you? Jerry asked. Jerry, I want to ask you a very important question, and I want you to answer me well as your mother, Mama Jerry said with seriousness on her voice. Mama, what is it? Is there any problem? Jerry asked. Jerry, oh, is it boy you have decided to use your life and do for Geraldine and her family? Or is it marriage you people are doing? Please tell me, Mama Jerry said. Mama, I don't understand what you mean. My son, since you married that girl, what have you achieved with your life? She's blind and she's also barren. If not, tell me why she's yet to be pregnant. The one that is paining me very well inside is that you have become a boy for her. You don't have a house of your own, no car of your own, nothing to write home about. You are wasting your life, oh, my son. Leave that blind girl and find another woman to bear you children, Mama Jerry said. Mama, stop talking like this. I love my wife. It hasn't been easy on her too. She didn't wish to go blind all of a sudden. And I can't go around asking my wife to buy me a house or give me money. Where's my pride, Mama? I will build house with my own money when the time is right, Jerry said to his mother. That day after that call, Jerry felt bad about his life. This was now how he planned that things would go, but he couldn't abandon his wife now. He couldn't think of betraying her too. He loved her so much. But how long will his love last? That weekend, Mama Jerry showed up at their house unannounced. Jerry was shocked to see his mother standing in their living room with a bag. Mama, why didn't you tell us that you were coming? Jerry asked. So I need permission to come and visit my son, Abby? No, Mama, that's not what I'm saying. I mean, if you had told us, we would have made the necessary provisions before you arrived. Jerry said, trying to explain. Don't bother. I have come to set your head in the right direction. By the way, where is your blind wife? She is blind and also barren. She should choose her battles. If it is blindness or barrenness, she can't be on both sides. Take me to my room, Mama Jerry barked. That day, JD overheard everything Mama Jerry said, and her words cut her like a knife. JD cried bitterly that day, but she quickly composed herself so her husband would not see. For the next couple of days, Mama Jerry made her miserable, saying all manner of provocative words and singing provocative songs in a way that made it obvious that she was talking to her. But Jaden didn't dare complain for the sake of her husband who had been so good to her. One night, when everybody had gone to bed, Mama Jerry called Jerry into her room and began, "My son, I'm worried about your future. This your boy, nothing will come out of it. Oh. You need to be as wise as a serpent. Start securing your future," Mama Jerry advised her son. "Mama, what future are you talking about?" Jerry asked. "How long are you going to continue to live like this, my son? Like a nanny. You need to start gathering wealth for yourself. See now, you are only married to a rich woman, but are you really rich? What about me and your siblings? Are we rich? We can't even afford to build a house in the village. What if she divorces you one day? What will you do, my son? Think it now." "Mama, Geraldine is not like that. If I asked her for money, she would give me. She would give me anything I want, but where is my pride as a man?" Jerry asked. "Okay, my son, I'm not saying you should ask her for money. I'm saying you should tell her to promote you in the office so you can be keeping small money. Then when you have gathered enough, you can leave the blind barren witch and go and marry another woman to bear you children," Mama Jerry said. "No, Mama, I can't leave Geraldine. I'm all she has," Jerry said. "Okay, even if you don't want to leave her, you can go outside and get another woman to bear children for you. She will never know. How will she even find her when she's even blind?" Mama Jerry said. After that conversation, Jerry lost his peace. Some of the things his mother said were true. He had been working tirelessly for JD and the company, but he has nothing to show for it. He only married a rich woman, but his own family were still broke at home. And at work, they all looked down on him, some even calling him a weak man who married his wife for money. That night, he couldn't sleep, and as he sat there thinking, some wild thoughts started creeping into his mind. One weekend, Jerry went to a bar to hang out with his friend Efe and Kunle. When he arrived at the bar, he confided in his friends about what his mother had told him and how it had been disturbing him. That your mother is a sharpshooter, oh. But this is marriage. It is better or for worse. You can't take her advice. I think you should discuss with your wife and see how you both can work things out. I know she loves you and she will do anything for you, Kunle said. Abeg, are you a learner? So you are saying he should go and beg his wife for money, abi? When she's even the liability in the marriage. See my guy, your mother is right. Tell your wife to promote you to the position of chief financial officer in the company. Then you can be collecting small change to secure your side. Efe said, trying to counter what Kule said. The position of chief financial officer, that would be a difficult one. Oh. The man occupying that position, he has been in the company for over 30 years. JD and her late grandfather trust the man die. So it will be difficult to remove him, Jerry said. My friend, pressure her, manipulate her. She loves you, she will do it to please you. After all, she wouldn't want you to leave. Efe replied. Kunle tried to warn Jerry about the route he was headed, but Efe always countered what he said with his own words. That night, when Jerry got home, he told his wife to promote him to the position of chief financial officer in the company. JD was shocked at his request. But why now all of a sudden, she asked. Babe, I'm your husband and I think I deserve a respectable position at the company. Everybody looks down on me and call me names, saying I married you for money. At least this position will shut a few mouths, Jerry replied. Honey, I can't give you that position. That position has been occupied by Mr. Bode for the past 30 years. He had been working with us for the longest, and my grandfather trusted him, and I trust him too. I can't just remove him overnight, JD said, trying to reason with her husband. But he wasn't having it. Are you saying you don't trust me? I'm your man, for crying out loud. I'm not saying you should remove him from the company. I'm saying you should transfer him to another department and make me the CFO. That's all I ask. And I deserve it after all these years of loyalty to you, Jerry retorted. But JD put her foot down and refused. That night, they had a heated argument, and for the next couple of days, Jerry gave JD the silent treatment, blackmailing her emotionally. JD was torn. She wanted to please her husband, but she feared for the company if she removed Mr. Bode as the CFO. But after a few days of silent torture, JD finally gave in and made Jerry the new CFO of King Conglomerate. She transferred Mr. Bode to another department. In just a few weeks after Jerry assumed the position of CFO, he immediately got to work as he had planned with his friend Efe. He started siphoning money into his personal account. At first, it was just a couple of millions, but after a couple of months, his greed became uncontrollable. Jerry started transferring large amounts into Swiss accounts, making it difficult for the money to be traced back to him. In just a few months, he built a mansion for his mother in the village and established all his siblings. He also got properties under his mother's name in different choice locations in Lagos. But with the money he now had access to came pride. Jerry started to show his true colors. Jerry started clubbing and frolicking around with the money he stole, and ultimately, he started coming home very late, spending lesser time at home with his blind wife. JD noticed his strange behavior, and when she asked what the problem was, he told her that he was busy at work. One day, as Jerry went clubbing with his friend Efe, his eyes landed on a beautiful girl. Her name was Ifoma. Jerry instantly took a liking to Ifoma. He told Ifoma that he was married to a blind woman that he didn't love, that he was filing for a divorce soon. And before you know it, they started a serious affair. Whenever Jerry closed from work, he would stop by at Ifoma's apartment and relax to enjoy his life before he would reluctantly go home around midnight to his wife. In just a few weeks of dating Ifoma, Jerry bought her a luxury car and upgraded her apartment to one of the most expensive apartments in Lagos with JD's money, the company's money. After a few months of dating Ifoma, she got pregnant for Jerry. Jerry was elated that he was going to be a father soon, but Ifoma started demanding for what Jerry couldn't give. She wanted to be his wife. She was tired of being the mistress. One day, As Jerry was working at the office, Ifeoma called to threaten him that if he didn't make it official, she was going to leave him. Babe, calm down. Give me some time to wrap up what I'm doing. Once everything falls in place, I will leave that blind witch and marry you, Jerry said. I'm tired of your empty promises, Jerry. My baby boy will be born soon, and yet I don't know where you live. I'm tired of being your side chick. Come and pay my bride price, oh, else I will disappear and you will never see us again, Ifeoma threatened. Jerry was distraught. He couldn't marry Ifeoma right now. There were some funds that he was expecting. He couldn't possibly divorce JD now, else he would lose everything. That evening, Jerry called his friend Ife to tell him that Ifeoma was pregnant for him. Oh boy, wow, congrats man, Ife said over the phone. Thanks man, but Ifeoma is breathing down on my neck. She wants me to make it official with her, but I can't do that yet. I'm not done with my blind bat, Jerry said. I still need some funds from the company. Well, my guy, why chase after a few loaves of bread when you can own the whole bakery? Tell your wife to make you her legal next of kin, and then you can collect the company from her and get rid of her and then marry whoever you want, if he said. Ah, my guy, you are so smart, eh? I didn't even think about this. Thanks, man. I owe you one, Jerry said. A few days later, Jerry told JD to make him a legal next of kin, and after much manipulation, she agreed and signed her life away. Consequently, if anything were to happen to JD, Jerry would automatically inherit everything, including the company. He was one step closer to achieving his goals, but he wasn't done with her yet. One evening, Jerry brought Ifeoma, who was heavily pregnant, into their home. He locked JD in another room that night and took Ifeoma into their room where they made new memories. That night, when JD tried to leave the room to get water because she was thirsty, she found out that it was locked. She knocked several times on the door to get Jerry's attention, but he never came. The next morning, after he had taken Ifeoma to her apartment, that was when he opened the door to let JD ask. And when JD asked why he locked her inside the room, Jerry claimed that the door was jammed because the locks were bad. How come? All the doors in this house are working perfectly. Why is the door suddenly jammed? JD asked. What do you mean, how come? Can you see it? I'm telling you what I can see and you are telling me how come. Jerry backed at her. But every night after that day, Jerry would bring different women into their matrimonial home, and every time he would lock Jaden inside another room so he could have his privacy. But one day something happened. Jerry, who had locked JD in a room the previous night, dashed out of the house, forgetting to open the door to let her out. That day, JD stayed locked up inside that room without food and water till Jerry returned from work in the evening. When he returned home that evening, he opened the door and didn't even apologize or say anything. All he asked was, "Are you hungry?" Jaden, who had not eaten or drank water in 24 hours, nodded her head, and Jerry took her to the dinner table and served her food. Jaden, who had been so hungry for so long, devoured the plate of food, stuffing her face without a care in the world. As she ate, Jerry stared at her in disgust. How did I end up with such a blind pig? He thought to himself. That night, he made up his mind to make JD disappear for good. He couldn't poison her because it would backfire on him, so he had to think of a creative way to make her disappear completely. But before he would do that, he had to make JD transfer all her assets to him. For the next couple of days, Jerry started scheming on how he would make JD transfer her assets to him. He hired expensive lawyers and financial analysts, and by the end of the week, they came up with a perfect plan to take everything from JD. One evening, after JD and Jerry were done eating, he told her there were some documents that needed a signature in the office. Without thinking anything to it, JD appended a signature and stamp. Unbeknownst to her, that she had just transferred all her assets to her husband Jerry. That night, Jerry had a victorious smile on his face. Finally, he was now in charge. Everything belonged to him now, or so he thought. The next day, Jerry told JD that they were going for a weekend getaway at a resort in the outskirts of the city. He packed some clothes and they drove out of the mansion to the remote part of the city. But when they got there, it was not a resort that he brought JD to. It was a special care home, a place for the abandoned. Jerry brought JD and her luggage out of the car and he told her to wait for him while he quickly went to a nearby supermarket to get some supplies they needed. And JD, who was excited about the weekend getaway, nodded with a bright smile on her face, unbeknownst to her that Jerry had paid the manager of the care home to keep her locked up for life. He told the manager not to let anybody see JD and that they shouldn't let her have access to a phone or a computer. Jerry drove off that day with a bright smile on his face. Finally, his headache was now gone. He could be with Ifeoma, the woman who was carrying his son. For the next couple of months, things turned for the better for Jerry. He made drastic changes in the company and sacked anybody who dared question him. He was untouchable. Ifeoma moved into the mansion and they had their son, and Jerry went to see her people for marriage and they set a wedding date. You might be wondering what happened at the care home. Well, JD was locked up in a room and treated like a slave. Whenever she asked about her husband, they would shut her up and starve her, sometimes even for days. She wasn't even allowed to go outside in the sun. She cried day and night and regretted not listening to her grandfather. Now, let's go back to Jerry. The day of the wedding arrived and it was a glamorous event. It was a big societal wedding, just as Mama Jerry had always wanted. Dignitaries and guests from all walks of life gathered to celebrate Ifeoma and Jerry. But amidst their joy, something happened. A strange figure suddenly stepped into the gathering and walked straight through the aisle to where Jerry and his new wife were seated. It was JD. She was not blind. She wasn't using a walking stick. She was radiant. Jerry was shocked to see JD that he locked away to rot in a care home, standing before him with her sight restored. Shock and fear gripped him. "But how?" he asked. "What are you doing here, JD?" he asked with panic on his face. JD smiled at him. "I have come to take back all you took from me," she said. Just as they were still talking, Grandpa Ben walked in with his radiant agbada. "Ah, you are dead. How come you are still alive and well? Or are you both ghosts?" Jerry said with fear and terror on his face. By this time, the guests had noticed tension going on between Jerry and the strange woman, an old man standing at the center of the wedding hall. All their gaze and attention were turned to them to know what was going on. "Jerry, my boy, I never liked you, but my granddaughter insisted on marrying you. I'm not dead, as you can see. I can't die yet when a low-life scam like you is still walking free. So this is how you would have treated my granddaughter. You left her in a care home to rot and you took over her company. You are wicked, boy. Well, you thought you were smart, but I was always one step ahead of you. I have taken back everything you took from my princess, down to the cars you bought for your new wife. We have reclaimed everything, down to the last penny. And boy, you are going to jail," Grandpa Ben said with a smirk. Jerry was dumbfounded. He couldn't find his words to explain himself now that he had been caught. His new wife, Ifeoma, started panicking. But who cares? Shortly afterwards, the men of the Financial Crime Commission busted into the wedding venue and they apprehended Jerry for fraud and siphoning company's money. When the guests saw the drama playing before their eyes, the entire hall erupted into chaos. Mama Jerry, seeing that her son had been arrested by JD, who she thought was blind, and her grandfather, who she thought was dead, collapsed in shock and fainted. The men of the Financial Crimes Commission charged Jerry to court, where the judge found him guilty of all charges and sentenced him to 50 years imprisonment. JD was both relieved and sad. She trusted Jerry with her life, but he didn't think twice when he dumped her at the care home. She was grateful to have Grandpa Ben looking out for her. JD and Grandpa Ben recovered most of the money Jerry siphoned, and they claimed all the assets he acquired with the company's fund. JD was reinstated as the CEO, and she restored the position of all the employees who got sacked during Jerry's regime. 1 year later, JD met a handsome man named Steve. He was a caterer. Steve owned a small restaurant where they met, and after a couple of months of talking, they started dating. This time, Grandpa Ben accepted and approved of Steve, and shortly afterwards, he got married. JD and Steve had 5 children later on, a large family like she had always wanted, and JD was glad she got a second chance at life. Grandpa Ben lived till he was 105 years old, seeing all his great-grandchildren growing and having his last wish of seeing JD settled with a good man fulfilled. Hi lovelies, what do you think of this story? As for me, I think honesty is the best policy. What morals have you learned from this story? Please let us know in the comment section below. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so. Until I bring another juicy and interesting story your way again, bye for now.